So good evening, everyone. Let's start by setting our motivation. From beginningless time is a long, long, long time. And we've been wandering in cyclic existence since beginningless time. Sometimes a little bit higher, sometimes a little bit lower, sometimes in the very pits of all the suffering that cyclic existence can offer, but just wandering through realms of dissatisfaction, craving that can't be satisfied, uncertainty, the miseries of taking birth again and again and again, and then dying over and over and over and over. One life after another, after another, after another. And in the course of all of those, we've also experienced the kindness of many, many beings. You know, throughout all of our experiences, there have been parents who have cared for us and friends who have supported us. But life after life, they too are simply wandering with no clear direction, no possibility, it seems, of relieving their suffering. At the end of one life, their kindness is over and we don't see each other for eons. But in this particular life, in this particular moment, we've had a chance to meet the Buddha's teachings. We've actually learned what are the causes of this endless wandering. And we've actually learned what the methods are to relieve ourselves and everyone else from this suffering. So tonight, as we reflect on cherishing the self-centered thought, as we explore a deeper understanding for what causes all our problems and a reflection on how we can get out. Let's also think about all of the kindness that we've received and make a determination to relieve all beings from that suffering. To take to heart the Buddha's teachings that we have the potential to become completely awake. And that by committing ourselves to relieving the suffering of others, and bringing them to happiness, we will create the causes for our own enlightenment and the liberation and enlightenment of all other beings. So make that the purpose of our gathering together tonight. So, Venerable Children is in Madison this month. She's studying with Geshe Sopa. So the residents of the Abbey will be doing reviews of some of the past weeks of teachings, as we've done before. So tonight, I'm Venerable Chinny, by the way, and I'm covering part of March 12th, March 26th, and then Venerable was away for quite a while, so she picks up again on May 7th and a little bit on May 14th, in which we were covering the part in the text that has this title, Banish the One to Blame for Everything. So we're talking about the self-centered thought, and particularly we're talking about the disadvantages of the self-centered thought. So in reviewing these teachings, I had some really great realizations that I hope I will share with you. Great in that I hope they led to some understanding. But one of the things that I remembered was that the very, very first Dharma teaching, Dharma line I heard that piqued my curiosity was this. My partner came home from a teaching and said, you know what I learned tonight? You know what? I learned that all suffering comes from self-cherishing. And I heard that and I thought, wow, that's really true. Huh, that's very interesting. So, since that time, I started going to teachings with Venerable Children, and over these years, I mean that was maybe 15 years ago, I have heard teachings on the self-cherishing thought and the disadvantages of self-cherishing dozens of times, if not hundreds. And I don't think that's an exaggeration. And I can say without any pride whatsoever that I still don't get it. That is amazing to me. But it's just like, I mean, I've done the Lamrim meditations over and over and over, and I have listened to these teachings, and I really have tried to apply them off and on, sometimes really, sometimes working at applying them. But the truth is, I can talk about it here, but I don't get it here. And so this self-cherishing thought and the thing that causes us so much suffering is just like this insidious, two-faced fiend inside our own minds that we can hardly even recognize. It is so slippery to get a finger on this. So this is just, I don't know, it was interesting to have that realization so clearly again as I was reflecting on these teachings. I know that Geshe Dorji Damdul said this to us when he taught here at the Abbey last summer, and I believe Geshe Kensur Tekchak said the same thing when he was teaching. But I think it's useful to remember. They were saying that, generally speaking, it takes quite a long time to explain the teachings that lead to an understanding of emptiness. But relatively quickly then, once it's explained, you can grasp it. So take that for what it's worth. Because the comparison is that it's pretty easy actually to describe the steps to developing bodhicitta. You can do it in a day, but it takes a very, very, very long time to realize. So, of course, I think we all have the same reaction there. If realizing emptiness is relatively easy, then this is really hard. And I think it's quite deceptive, because I know a lot of people are really attracted to the Dharma on the basis of learning about bodhicitta and developing, developing love and compassion. And then we think that should be easy. I'm a nice person, you know. I want to skip over this other stuff at the beginning and go right for the bodhicitta teachings. But now, some years into the practice, I see how very, very difficult it is to develop all of these points. And this particular understanding of the self-cherishing, self-centered thought, and getting to be so familiar with the disadvantages that we recognize it whenever they arise, I think is something to really make a determination to accomplish in our practice, something we really want to do. So one of the other things that I realized as I was studying is that, partly for myself and maybe for you too, one of the reasons that the self-cherishing concept is so hard for us to get is because we haven't first trained in the preliminaries. You know, I mean, that was our first teaching with this text, first training in the preliminaries. And so specifically, like the first disadvantage of a self-centeredness that's in one of the Lamrim books that I study says, self-centered thought has kept us in cyclic existence since beginningless time. Simple sentence. But if I have not spent a whole lot of time thinking about the disadvantages of cyclic existence, if I don't have a really clear idea that cyclic existence itself is something to be abandoned, then this little statement, self-centered thought has kept us in cyclic existence since beginningless time, is kind of pointless. It's like, okay, that's bad. Big deal. So once again, if I don't have a deep, deep feeling for the disadvantages of cyclic existence, then I won't have a deep, deep feeling for the disadvantages of self-centeredness. The other thing that's also true is that in training in the preliminaries, if I don't have a deep understanding that my actions have a result, if I don't really know deep in myself that my virtuous actions result in pleasant experience and that my non-virtuous actions result in all my pain and suffering, then also understanding the disadvantages of self-centeredness is not so sharp. It's not so deep and acute. So I really feel like looking at the self-centered thought leads us again and again and again to deepen all the steps that come up before it. So that was just juicy to re-examine personally. And Venerable Children, of course, covered all of that. And we have lots of material with which to study it, but we really need to be thinking about the preliminaries, the beginning, in order to take us to the self-cherishing thought. So, what is it, self-cherishing thought? There's Lama Tsongkhapa sums it up. All the defects and sufferings are the faults of only one thing, the self-cherishing conception. From the beginningless of samsaric life, how much suffering has been experienced in all three samsaric worlds. But still, the creator of all faults has not been recognized and is sought in external objects. So we're looking for the creator outside. Because of this ignorance, I have held and harmed the wish-fulfilling mother sentient being as an enemy. On the other hand, my worst enemy, the self-cherishing conception, the cause of all suffering, has been held as the dearest friend. Whatever the action performed, it is under the control of the self-cherishing conception. Now, on that, sums it up pretty clearly. So, we can go to the text. I think the list, when I read the lists of disadvantages in the Lam Rim meditations, I think we can get quite dry with them. What I love about Nam Kapel is that his images are so vivid. He is just there with some of his analogies and stuff. So I think, we'll rely on him a lot tonight. So what he says is, we sentient beings run after misery that we do not desire. At the root of it all, we seek to lay the blame elsewhere. This is a mistake. So number one, our self-centered mind is always looking outside to blame everything. Everything that's uncomfortable, everything that is unhappy, everything that makes us a little bit miserable, everything that doesn't go our way, everything that thwarts our happiness. It's our self-centered thought that is looking for a blame on the outside. So how come this happens? So Venerable Children says that we don't understand who we are, and we don't understand how phenomena exist. So we have this basic ignorance for how things are. That's the root. And then out of this ignorance, we grasp at a sense of self and put this disproportionate emphasis on I, me, my, mine. So from our first breath in the morning, our first breath into life, and probably breaths before that, from our first thought in the morning to all day long to the last thing at night, we're driven by what makes me happy? What makes me happy? We're completely self-obsessed and kind of self-preoccupied with our own view. We're just like, this is the center of the universe, and it is the center of the universe. If I look around, I cannot go 360 degrees, but however many degrees I can, this is the center. So, of course, my view is that this is the most important. And I don't give 2 cents that you think yours is the most important, because you're you and I'm me and you're over there. And so when you're important and my important come together all day long, we've got conflict going on. So what should we blame then? We should blame the self-conception for all of our problems, not each other. We should blame this misunderstanding for how things exist, and the willingness to, and the desire to make ourselves happy at all costs, at whatever cost, at your cost. So Namkapel again explains this in his text. He said, this is because, the reason this is a mistake, this is because all the various lengthy and violent sufferings that come from being born in the 5 or 6 realms of cyclic existence are not without causes, and they don't arise from unrelated causes. These come about in dependence upon the actions and disturbing attitudes that give rise to everything. Okay? Since actions are caused by disturbing emotions, so we create action, karma, we move on the basis of disturbing emotions that arise in our mind. Since actions are caused by disturbing emotions are the primary factor that we should blame. So underneath it all, our primary source of all our suffering and difficulty we can look at as the mental afflictions or the disturbing attitudes that arise. Moreover, amongst the disturbing attitudes, it is the ignorance that clutches onto a misconception of self that is the principal source of all misery. So furthermore, since disturbing emotions chiefly created by seizing onto a misconception of self bring us harm, they are the actual adversaries. We should not maintain relations with this long-term antagonist. But, of course, we don't see this. We blame everything outside of us. And as I said, even we've heard these teachings for years, when we're in pain or we're in fear, we point outside of ourselves immediately. We're just got our finger up. Where can I lay the blame? We don't ever turn around and think of what's happening here. But what the texts have all said to us is that when we see all the misery of cyclic existence, it is this ignorance and, as Venerable Children calls it, its best friend, the self-cherishing thought that rises right up out of it. Right there. It's these two together that destroy all our happiness. We had somewhere around here, floating in the dining room, we had for a while, quite a while, a quote by Reverend Master G.U. Kennett. It was really simple. It says, "Where there is suffering, there is self." Sums it right up. It would be a nice slogan to sort of tattoo on our arm or something. And so all we really have to do is change the thought, which sounds very simple, and maybe it is. I think in the moments, in fact, we probably know that in the moments when we've actually turned our attention to recognize that self-cherishing, or self-centered thought, and intentionally applied some of the antidotes and different ways of thinking, some of the mind training actually, we've seen that it can change. But it is such a habit, it is so much a part of how we've been operating for so long that we have to be quite diligent in staying on top of it. So it's like, well, everything. We see everything upside down. You know, we blame the schedule for our discomfort throughout the day. We blame the person that we're arguing with for their obstinance. We never turn around and say, oh, this is a result of my karma. This is a result of my own afflictions. This is a result of my self-centered mind. So that's what we need to do. So, again, back to the text. So he continues, so we should not maintain relations to this long-term antagonist, our ignorance. Then he says, moreover, we can attribute all the harms to our selfish attitude. And thinking how it slams the door on all benefits and accomplishments, we should be aware of it. Likewise, the self-centered attitude is an expression of stupid ignorance. So this lack of consideration for others is like taking the sharp weapon of wrong views and slaughtering any concern for good and bad deeds. So, this lack of consideration for others is like taking hold of the sharp weapon of wrong views, slaughtering any concern for good and bad deeds, slaughtering any understanding of the fact that our actions have an ethical result, or have an ethical dimension and lead to results. Therefore, thinking that we are making ourselves happy, we just keep doing stuff that makes us miserable and will continue to make us miserable forever. So, one of the other things I realized in listening to about 3 weeks of Venerable Chödrön's 1001 faces of what the self-centered attitude looks like. Anybody who's seen any of her teachings has watched this. She's brilliant at playing out all the ways that our self-centered attitude can manifest, especially her hit song, poor me, when she goes into that one, poor me. So I get that this illustration has to happen because we don't get it. We hear these words, but unless we see it reflected back over and over and over, we just don't get it. It's a little bit like the fish in water thing. The old kind of idea that you can't ask a fish to describe water because water is all it knows, until some catch and release fisherman has taken it out of the water for a while and then it has a different experience. So maybe it can talk about it then, but still not in positive terms. But we've also been operating from our self-centered attitude for so long that we can't really, it's very hard for us to get outside of it and look back at ourselves. So to have someone who can demonstrate for us again and again and again how we demonstrate it in so many different ways is really, it's really helpful. So another place that we get hung up with this self-centered attitude is having to be very, very careful that we realize that our self-centered thought and our conventional self are not the same. And again, I think we've heard this quite a few times, but it is really, really critical and also very tricky, because self-centered thought gets in there and kind of twists even our view of that. So I think, we have this instinctual response to any threat or any perceived threat that puts our welfare above all else. And that just seems normal and natural. So there's that, it's kind of innate, it seems. And then we have all these acquired views that usually we talk about that in terms of our nature of reality, but we also have very specific acquired cultural training that says, yes, put yourself first. Yes, you have to get ahead. Yes, no one will take care of you but yourself. Yes, it's a dog-eat-dog world. Nobody will defend you but yourself. So we've got it going and coming in every direction that says over and over and over, I'm number one, I need to be number one. If I don't put myself as number one, nobody's going to put me as number one. And it is so deep in us that to challenge it, we can say, yes, 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 my self-centered thought is the cause of all my suffering. And you can even logically line it out if you take the time to think about it. But we do not believe it at all. We just, we're so reactive in our responses to any kind of threat. So I also think that we're carrying so much Sunday school baggage about being selfish that we were taught when we were kids. That somehow, and you're taught in kindergarten or you're taught in Bible school, it's really evil to be selfish. So the other thing I think that happens is that we start to hear these teachings, and first of all we kind of go into denial. It's like, oh, well, no, I'm not evil, I'm a good person. So no, I'm not selfish. But then the more we listen, the more we hear that this really does describe our situation, then we go straight to the other side that says, oh, I'm selfish, I must be really, really terrible. And I think, I mean, this is certainly my own experience, and I see it in my Dharma friends, that it's so easy for us to go there without recognizing for a second that that is also self-centered mind. The mind that says, I am so terrible. I am so bad that I'm selfish. Yeah, it's just self-centered mind again, eating away at our mind. So it's undermining our Dharma practice all the time. So those are some of the things that really get into, I think at a really gross level, get into the obstacles of our being able to even think about this and take it in more deeply. So we have to look at, we have to look again and again and again at what it is, really get clear about what it is, and then really think about its disadvantages over and over and over. Okay, so what are its disadvantages? Nam Kapel. It's really great. Right here within us is an evil butcher who cuts off the source of a life of high status and definite goodness. So our self-centered thought completely cuts us off from upper rebirth and completely cuts off or obstructs our possibilities for liberation and enlightenment. That's a pretty big disadvantage. The selfish thought, holding up the bag of the three poisons, is the thief within us who destroys our harvest of virtue. So, what's our harvest of virtue? The harvest of virtue is our happiness. All the good things that come from positive actions, right? So, holding up the bag of three poisons, ignorance, anger, and attachment, the self-centered thought completely cuts us off from everything that's good. This is my favorite line. By collecting rotten, worthless things in the cave of our heart, we have here within us an owl-headed deceiver who attracts all human and inhuman interferences. Collecting rotten, worthless things in the cave of our heart. So when we were doing this teaching, she listed a few things. What are we collecting our heart? Craving. What are we collecting? Malice, jealousy, resentment, hostility, rage, malice, confusion, doubt, miserliness, wrong views. I mean, the list goes on and on and on and on and on. But it's true. It's really true that it is that self-centered thought that puts our happiness above everything else. I mean, that's the result. The craving goes on and on and on. I want, I need, I must have, I have to have, you're in my way, get out of my way, I'm going to knock you over, I hate you. I mean, we go back and forth between these things over and over and over. And sometimes my hate you means I'm jealous of you because you have something I want. Sometimes my hatred is you just got in my way, I'm going to bash you, and so I'm enraged. I mean, we have different manifestations or different colors of it. But that's what our self-centered thought drives us to. It really does. Even though the previous Buddhas, the transcendent destroyers, have spent as long as we have in the beginningless world, we have been unable to adhere to any of the excellent qualities of this or the world beyond. So the Buddhas have been around as long as we have. They've been wandering and started out in cyclic existence too. They're Buddhas and we're not. That's on the basis of our self-centeredness thought. And we haven't been able to adhere to any of the excellent qualities that would propel us there because of the self-centered thought. It undermines our Dharma practice in lots of ways. You know, we can't get to teachings. You know, self-centered thought is behind it. We can't get ourselves to the cushion. Self-centered thought can be behind that. We don't take the advice of our teacher. Self-centered thought is right there, thinking I know best for myself, what's right, and so forth. Yeah, we get mad at our teacher, we get mad at the people of the Dharma Center, we walk out, that's it, I've had it with the Dharma because you guys ordered yellow cushions and by God we should have had green. I mean, whatever. But our mind takes us to all those places that cuts us off from the very things that could benefit us the most. I went to the Lamrim meditations that we're more familiar with, the ones that Venerable Children has put together. And of course, those disadvantages are also listed really clearly, and some of them are reflected in Nam Kapel's text. Like one of the Lamrim disadvantages of self-centeredness is that it is the source of all fear, the basis of all fear. So, you know, that's kind of a big statement. Even to think about that more deeply, that the self-centered thought is the basis of all fear and all the ways that fear manifests. You know, I mean, we have the huge fears. We have fears of poisonous snakes. We have fears of, I don't know what, typhoons, hurricanes, global warming, those kinds of things. But we also have these little tiny fears that someone will hurt us, someone will criticize us, people will think badly of us. So we build all these walls around ourselves to block all of this stuff out. Nobody gets in because we can't let them in. So we live in this prison completely created by the self-centered mind. And then we're anxious and we're lonely. And we blame everybody else because nobody's really reaching out to me, nobody's really being friendly to me, you know. So once again, the attention goes outside to look for the blame, but the blame is actually in our own minds. You know, one of the things Nam Kapel says in the text, he said, if we hear rats in the house, self-centered mind makes us fear that our nose will be bitten off. You know, we hear a clap of thunder, self-centered mind knows that we're going to be hit by lightning. So this, we just on the slightest little provocation, that self-centered thought creates this whole scenario of fear, you know, potential, tremendous danger. It makes a huge deal out of something that is really quite small, and makes us crazy. It really drives us crazy. But we don't get that that's what's making us crazy. It's so sad. It's really, I mean, we have to laugh. We have to laugh because it's so stupid and funny. But it's also really just like sad because it's right here in our own mind and we cannot see it. It's just, you know, as Venerable Children says, we're also afraid of all the wrong things. You know, we're afraid of people's opinions. We're afraid of people's criticism. Are we afraid of our afflictions? No. Are we afraid of the self-centered thought that's in our mind? No, it's our best friend. Who is going to look out for me? That is so, like, fundamentally true. Nobody will take care of me if I don't take care of myself. And that's true if I don't, you know, make sure there's enough rice milk in the morning. And that's true if I don't make sure that there's, you know, I have a good cushion in the hall. Nobody else is going to go in there and make sure I have a good cushion in the hall. Well, so how important is that I have a good cushion in the hall? But it's very, very important because I need to be comfortable and I need to be happy at all costs. One of the disadvantages in the Lamrim that says, the self-centered thought makes us overly sensitive and easily offended. Would you say that's true? I mean, we interpret every little thing, well, we interpret, that's where I can stop right there. We hear something and we interpret. And we don't interpret in a vast, sort of expansive-minded way. We interpret in a really teeny little narrow, this big way, that was about me. And there's a way that I want to be perceived, and there's a way that I want you then to recognize me, and you must speak to me this way, and you must hold me in this way, and if you don't, then I'm very sensitive about that. My feelings get hurt all the time. It's our self-centered thought. Every single time our feelings get hurt. That's what it is. We're jealous of everyone. He has great lines about this. Yeah, we're jealous of everyone, from the highest spiritual friends to the lowliest louse. They have something, I want it. They have respect, I deserve it. They have money, I should have it. They got my job. They got my praise. They got more credit for the project than I did. On and on and on. Then we're competitive. We're competitive with equals, right? Constantly. Do you have that in the back of your head somewhere? Oh, I could do that better. Well, why are they doing it that? Oh, I could be better than that. Oh, wait a minute. I think maybe they're not as good as I am. I'll try to get better now. I'm just like... So we're competitive with equals, arrogant towards inferiors. Oh my goodness, let's puff up and tell them exactly what their place is, because I have a place. Keep them in their place. That's self-centered thought. We become conceited when praised. Yes. Angry when criticized or abused. Yes, we do. I mean, I don't know about you. I do. All those things are true. It impedes our spiritual progress and prevents enlightenment. So in terms of the Dharma, self-centered thought sabotages everything. We have lots of wrong views that we make up to make self-centered thought more comfortable. So we interpret the Buddha's teachings to sort of fit with how we are. Or, what's even slipperier is I think we kind of let some things slide. That's also, I think, a manifestation of self-centered thought. Like, that teaching is really too difficult. I don't think it applies to me. Or, I don't think I have to think about it right now. I'll wait till I'm further along the path. So on one hand, there might be a place where that's really useful, where it might be, indeed, this is a topic that's kind of not so comfortable for me, and I don't feel like I'm really ready to take it on and chew on it. And so there could be some wisdom in there. But there also could just be some flat out, I don't want to think about this. I actually think, at least for myself, I know that in the early days of my practice, I sure did not want to think about renunciation as a prelude to studying bodhicitta. I didn't want to think about that. That wasn't interesting to me. I wanted to think about love and compassion. Well, now, excuse me. There's a little self-centered thought going on there. So I think sometimes we can do that as well. Even, thinking about the advice we get from our teacher and how difficult it is sometimes for us to follow, or we say, please give me advice, or please guide me, but then we don't like the form it came in. Self-centered thought, for sure. Sure. So we're missing out even on the opportunity to be in relationship with someone who actually could guide us out of our self-centered thought. In fact, it seems to me that when we're being shown our self-centered thought by our teacher, that is really the most kind act we could get, and from each other also. But it is not the way we receive it. We just don't receive it that way. We're so sensitive, So that's self-centered thought. So those are all the ways, those are some of the ways that self-centered thought really undermines everything and causes us so much pain. That self-centered thought is behind all these kinds of concerns. So it's very hard to see in ourselves, of course, as we've said before. It's much easier to see it living in community. So there's a great value. Venerable Tarpa just came home from Seattle, appreciating again how much value there is in living in community. But for sure, that's part of what's so difficult about living in community, is that we have our self-centeredness banged on all the time, sometimes consciously, sometimes not consciously, and we do not like it. So I have a question too. So during the course of this teaching, Venerable talked about these 4 things that people generally had kind of things that were more dominant in their minds were needing to be liked, needing to be comfortable, needing to be right, or wanting to win. And noticing that we all have some sort of tendency towards one, mostly, towards one toward another, and asking which one of them was dominant. So we all could pretty much identify which one was dominant for them. But then after that, did we use that information to notice? Like, mine is for sure I want to be liked. Have I used that since that teaching to notice that every time the thing about I want to be liked comes up, for me to recognize that this is self-cherishing? No, I just added this to the list of things that are about me. Oh, yes, I'm this age, I'm an Aries, I'm a this, I'm a that, this is my identifying characteristic, and oh yes, I'm a person who needs to be liked by people. I didn't use it as a way to gauge what my self-cherishing was like. And I suspect most of us didn't. We didn't go there with it. So it's just another way to define ourself. So many ways the thing just... So we wonder why we're not getting anywhere with our practice. We wonder why all these afflictions are coming up. Sometimes we go through periods where just, oh no, why is this happening? Why is this happening? We get really discontented or really unhappy. We want to know why, what's going on with that. We get really restless. But, when we ask those questions of ourselves or of our teacher, are we really investigating the source? Because pretty much universally we could draw the source back to, this is a self-centered conception at work. So Nam Kapel says, like the roaming of an unbridled horse, of all the disturbing emotions, the self-centered thought, is the most restless. So it's not a disturbing emotion, but Venerable says it's worse. Because when it's running, the self-centered thought takes us from one afflicted state to another afflicted state to another afflicted state, back on and on and on and on. Yo-yo mind from one affliction to another, to another, to another. Out of that, what? We create all these negative actions. Out of that, we speak harshly. Out of that, we have divisive speech. Out of that, we talk behind people's backs. Out of that, we confront each other, and so forth and so forth. If we're really, really enraged, we can pick up the fist and go for it, or engage in sexual misconduct out of craving or out of anger. I mean, there's so many things that we do when the afflictions are running that seem to be even out of control. So this is all where it comes from. So the text again says, never fool ourselves that happiness arises from virtue and unhappiness arises from negativity. Well, we know that. We say it over and over. But we don't behave that way. And this is because we're under the thrall of our self-centered thought. So the text says a few more disadvantages. Wherever we're born, from the peak of existence to the hell without respite, so from the very top of cyclic existence to the very bottom, we dwell in misery. Whoever we befriend is a friend of suffering. Whatever objects we use are nothing but objects of anguish. That's a big disadvantage of the self-centered thought. We fight with swords and arrows and spears in the hope of gaining victory and profit. And when we lose, we console ourselves by accusing somebody else. We have within us an evil being who shamelessly blames all our problems on our learned teachers and abbots, our friends, and those dear to us, our relatives and parents. So the text sums it up. Essentially, if all the Buddhas of the 3 times were to teach for eons about the disadvantages of the disturbing emotions that arise out of the self-centered attitude, they would never end. This is really a great quote. If all the Buddhas of the 3 times were to teach for eons about the disadvantages of the disturbing emotions that arise out of a self-centered attitude, they would never end. That is pretty big. Beginningless time is a long time, and they would never end. So, the theme of this is banish the one to blame for everything. So then how do we banish it? Or Venerable Tarpa had asked when the teaching was, how do we clobber the self-centered thought? It was a great way to put it. So number 1, we have to identify it. That's the key. That's the beginning. And it's so hard to identify because, as we've said, we think it's our best friend. So it doesn't make any sense. At some really gut emotional level, this doesn't make any sense to us. So we have to look at it again and again and think really deeply about it. You know, we can't just pray it away. We can't just say, oh, self-centered thought is so awful, and make prayers and purifications, which, you know, certainly support an intention. But that doesn't move it. That doesn't move it. So we have, you know, and we have to realize that we've taken refuge in these emotional patterns over and over and over. And we trust them. No matter that we can logically prove that they don't support us. We, at a gut level, we really trust them. So we have to really identify this thought. And Venerable had an analogy that really struck me. She said, if somebody came to you and told you your best friend was criticizing you behind your back, like your long-time dearest friend, you would not believe them. You absolutely wouldn't believe it. And even, she said, even you heard them doing it, your trust is so great in that friend that you know that there's, you know, they were joking or you misheard. I mean, you flat out would not believe that such was the case. And if it were proven true, it would actually be very shocking and disturbing. Really disturbing, like devastating. So we have to familiarize our own mind with how the self-centered thought works over and over and over and over, because we don't get it and we don't see it. So that's number 1. Identify it, see it when it's in action. Then number 2, we need to meditate that the self-centered thought is the cause of all our suffering. So that's the next step. We see it, then we see what its result is. And again, we really believe it's the cause of happiness. She also warned us that if we bash it without really seeing this, our practice gets very unhealthy. So I had a personal experience of this last winter, because I got really clear that I was going to go after this self-centered thought, and now I look at it as sort of a whack-a-mole approach. You know that game where the mole, I mean that pinball game or something, where the mole pops up and you whack it and the mole pops up and you whack it, and I've never actually hit the mole, but you whack and whack and whack. I feel like that's what I was doing for my self-centered thought. So I'd see it and whack, see it and whack, see it and whack, but not getting at all that my whacking was just as self-centered as the behavior I was trying to like change. It got really messy. It got, and so of course what then that leads to is then I'm so terrible, da 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 da. So it's just self-centered thought singing its big song. So this thoughtful meditation about what the real results are leads, I think, to a more subtle approach. And also one that comes with understanding, not just, let's cut this out, because we can't do it that way. You can't just smash it out. We have to really retrain our mind. And that's what all the thought training really is that follows, is to retrain our mind in relation to the self-centered thought. But we must see its defects or we won't bother. The third thing to do, she said, go back in your life and look at the times that you were unhappy. Really take this to the cushion and see where the self-centered thought was. What role did it play? How did it come up? How did it influence what we did in those situations? And now, in retrospect, we have some distance and hopefully a little more wisdom. You can see the result. And so that exercise can actually give us a whole lot of information about how that self-centered thought works in our own minds. And then a fourth step is to train in recognizing this. Whenever we see I want, I need, like craving, even if it's subtle, then that's all about me and mine. To train the mind to get that. Whenever we're depressed, we're feeling all alone, unworthy, incapable, unloved, that's a key. It's all about me, I, and mine. So that's a time to really start looking at how the self-centered thought is at work. When we're impressed with ourselves, proud about how we got the best of somebody, triumphant that we finally put so-and-so in her place, or even not so negative, triumphant that we succeeded in making a great video. It's all about me, my, mine. So to just catch it, to learn to try to catch that thought and go, oh, that's coming from a place of self-centeredness. When we're worried about money, we're worried about how we look, we're worried about our weight, we're worried about our hairstyle, those kinds of things. That's all about me, I, my, mine. So, thinking about this, I just thought, what? If we weren't focused on ourselves, what the heck would we think about? I was just trying to imagine what would be in my mind if I were not so self-preoccupied. You have to think for a minute, what would be in there? How focused could a meditation be? How open could a heart that wants to help others, really how easily it could reach out if it's not gripped around the self-centeredness. How genuine would be the concern for other people. So it's, and then next week Venerable John Pell will actually teach about the advantages of cherishing others, so that kind of takes us to that thought. But just imagine the mind without it. That's rather expansive and refreshing. So Venerable reassured us that we need lots of introspection to see this over a long period of time. This is not something that's going to go away tomorrow. And so not to look at our selfishness and feel guilty. Not to look at our selfishness and hate ourselves for it. But to be able to kind of cleanly and clearly analyze it for what it is and make a strong determination to reform that self-centered habit. Because if we don't give it up, that self-centered thought, she said, will pull us by the nose, like, a bull with a ring through its nose, right into the hells. And that's true. It just leads us right into more misery. And we can see that now, And we can see that into future lives, future rebirths. So hold your grudge against the self-centered thought, she said, and determine to destroy it. You know, all these clocks all have different times on them. I think I have another couple of minutes. I just wanted to share briefly a meditation that Jeffrey Hopkins says is one of His Holiness the Dalai Lama's favorite meditations around this. I said, imagine, so you have three figures that imagine that you yourself are in the center, yourself as your wisest self, confident, relaxed, when all your wisdom is present. And then on your right is your most sniveling, miserable, self-centered self. Your neediest, cravingest, get out of my way, I want my way self. And then on the other side, on your left, is an array of needy people, either very ill or extremely poor, great poverty, or whatever actually particularly tweaks your heart, and evokes your compassion. But a group of several people there. So then, with your wise self in the middle, you can remember one of four examples. So remember an incident when you were whining about your own self-pity, your own welfare, just seeing how wound up you are in yourself, that it's just ugly, awful. Or you can remember a situation when you unreasonably were really, really angry and just carried on about something. Or remember an instant of selfish desire, like when you were in a store and you wanted something so badly, you were just like craving to get this thing. Or remember a time when you were greedily jealous, when somebody so got what you wanted that you just could hardly stand that. So thinking about these kinds of things. And then hold the people who evoke your compassion on one side, and then there's this sniveling, angry or jealous or craving being on the other side. And the wise person is sitting there looking at the two, saying, this person is in need, these people are in need, who will I help? And of course the logic of the wisdom has to be, I will help these 10 beings over here. And that you just keep looking at these, creating these situations over and over and over again, where you see your own selfishness against the needs of all other beings, to help familiarize ourselves with the choice that we actually have. To choose to take our attention off of this craving and neediness and move it towards all those other sentient beings, which, as Venerable says, one of me, 6 billion, who wins? Logically the 6 billion, but I think it's quite a graphic image to be able to look at how we a personification of our own self-centered thought and see that that's our obstacle. That's our obstacle to being able to really benefit others. So, banish the one to blame for everything. I think that's it. Next week, Venerable John Pell will do the advantages of cherishing others.